Hello, my name is Sabrina Kuhn-Godfrey. I'm running at large for the Board of Education. Making sure all students have quality, accessible, and equitable education is my priority. It would be an honor to serve our community as a member of the board. Vote Sabrina Kuhn-Godfrey for BOE during early voting or on primary day, May 17th.
Paid for by Sabrina Kuhn-Godfrey for BOE. Area softball stars. Register for the Diamond Stars Softball Transfer Portal Showcase June 14th and 15th at Bob Lewis Park in Asheville, North Carolina. This showcase is for any player currently in the transfer portal or any JUCO player. Get the opportunity to showcase your skills in front of college coaches from all levels. Over the two-day event, players participate in evaluations such as softball skills and metrics by College Sports Evaluations, drill and team practice participation, and playing in 3 games. For more information, visit DiamondStarEvents.net or email Coach Ben McKinney at bmckinney@DiamondStarEvents.net.
Beamer Tire and Auto Repair, now with 3 locations across the Triad in High Point, Greensboro, and our new location in Kernersville. Beamer Tire and Auto offers full-service auto repair, all tire brands, free alignment checks, oil changes, and more. In Kernersville, check out the no appointment needed Quick Lube shop. Check out their thousands of 5-star ratings via Google and Yelp. They care because they know that you can go anywhere. So try a shop with a beating heart, not a bottom line. Beamer Tire and Auto Repair. Visit us on Facebook or at beamertire.com.
This is Coach Rez, head coach of your Carolina Cobras arena football team. You're listening to TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, your home for Triad sports.
And you know this, man.
Like to have everybody's attention for a moment.
There's a stat. I don't like bringing up stats, but there's one stat about the Panthers.
In the world is James Harden better scorer than Michael Jordan?
No, he's more creative in that.
Traveling is not creative, Brandon.
He doesn't.
No matter what the score is, and they've said it themselves, whether they're up 10, down 20, whatever, they know they can turn it on whenever.
Why did you have to bring up the Cowboys in this conversation?
Lived in Texas for 2 years and just could not stand to watch Cowboys football.
All right, listen up.
Welcome to The Rundown. Here's Desmond Johnson.
Well, gentlemen, I went to bed early last night for the first time all week. Went to bed like 10:30 in the evening on a Friday. Got a lot of sleep last night. Woke up and my Carolina Panthers drafted a quarterback. Somehow got back into the 3rd round and picked up a quarterback, and apparently he may be a steal. Welcome to The Rundown. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by the usual suspects, Hot Rod Funderburk, Brandon Blakeney, and Larry Frank in the house for hour 1. We got a loaded show this morning. We're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about, they're halfway through it. We'll get you ready all the way up to noon when the 4th round will start. The Panthers, big draft for the Panthers. They get the left tackle they wanted. They get the quarterback they wanted. We'll dissect all of that. Skylar Callahan, co-host of the Believe in Panthers podcast and beat writer for the Panthers for Sports Illustrated. He'll be on in the 2nd hour, along with Learfield's Ryan Smith, who's a bit of a draft expert himself. So this draft heavy Saturday morning here on the Rundown. We'll also talk about our opinion, the best number 1 overall picks of the past 20 years. There's a lot to choose from and some fun facts in there as well. And then Brendan Marks from The Athletic will join us about halfway through the show. It's crazy that it's April the 30th and we still have all of this Carolina and Duke hoops news coming in from the recruiting side of it. We'll catch up with our buddy Brendan, who's got a lot to talk about in terms of Carolina potentially opening as preseason number 1 next fall. The big recruit they landed earlier this week, as well as Duke doing what Duke does with this massive haul of recruits coming in here at the end of 2022 and then the 2023 class as well. So both teams doing well as Hubert and John Shire take over the programs. But first, of course, the biggest news of the week, Carolina Panthers and the NFL draft in general, as I bring in the panel. Guys, let's just start it off. Let's dissect the Panthers and what they did over the past 2 days. First, day 1 on Thursday night, the Panthers did nothing. Let me ask this question first to you guys. And Rod, I'll let you go first. Were you surprised that the first 4 or 5 picks of the first round were all defense?
To be honest with you, yes and no. And the reason why I say yes and no is First of all, no, because Des, you already know I'm a defensive guy when it comes
That's why I was
to
going you first.
yeah. When it comes to playing football, I'm a defensive guy. I feel like defense wins championships. Whoever has the best defense is going to go a long way in the playoffs. Whoever has the best defense in the championship game normally wins because it's hard to win if you can't score. Who had the best defense in NCAA football this past season? Hands down, in my opinion, the Georgia Bulldogs. Just hands down. Period. That's just my opinion, and I could be wrong as two left shoes. But then you had some great individual players elsewhere, So when Walker went and then Hutchinson went, and the next pick, I was like, yeah, defense. That's how it's gonna roll. And then plus you got to understand the AFC picked first. Am I right? Then the AFC picked first. Yeah. Jacksonville Jaguars. So AFC picked first. Is the AFC not loaded with quarterbacks? Well, you have to do something to neutralize those quarterbacks in the AFC. You got to have pass rushers. You got to have a defense to knock those quarterbacks out of the AFC if you can. I know it's going to be a hard task, but if you can, you got to have that because the AFC is loaded with quarterbacks. But I am also surprised that the NFL or the draft went defense first because guys, in my opinion, the NFL is trending toward the wide receiver, the quarterback, open up the big plays, get it down the field. Look at Aaron Rodgers and how he's taking the ball down the field. Look at Joe. What's Cool Joe up in the Bengals? Joe Burrows. Yeah. He's getting the ball down the field. I mean, everybody wants to get the ball down the field. We want these big plays. We want these wide receivers to just kind of open up and move the ball and make the game exciting and prime time. So for that reason, I am a little surprised that they did go defense in the first 4 draft picks.
Larry, host of Frankly Speaking Sports here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com every Tuesday through Thursday at 11 a.m. What was your initial thought when you watched through the first round as we watched these quarterbacks that we've all been talking about the past 2 months really just tumble down the thing into the third? Only one quarterback selected in the first round, and that was Kenny Pickett to Pittsburgh at pick number 20. So 19 picks before quarterback gets touched this year in the draft. What were your thoughts?
I only had 2 quarterbacks going in the first round. I was more surprised that Malik Willis stayed in that draft as long as he did because of all the media hype and everything involved. I didn't get to watch Malik play a lot. I got to watch highlights of Malik because it wasn't accessible to us as much on TV and everything to watch those games. But I was more surprised at how long it took. I agree with Hot Rod that I was not – defense wins championships. That's exactly what I was going to say. When you look at the teams that were in the top 5, you're talking, I believe it was Jacksonville, the Giants, the Jets. I think the Texans might have been in there too. Yeah. Those are teams that pretty much need everything. And if defense wins championships, you got to start with defense then. And that's what those teams did. But to answer your questions about the quarterbacks, yeah. But there was, I believe, don't quote me, it might have been Mel Kipe or Todd McShay. I can't remember. One of those two had nobody going in the first round as a quarterback. So, it did surprise me, but we talked about it. Whether we agree with it or hate saying it, we said it, I think it was last week on the show, Desmond, it's not what the NFL, and I stress the word, the NFL owners considered a strong quarterback class. And it's just not when you think about the game and the way it is today. And I still think the best quarterback possibly or arguably right next to Malik Willis in this entire draft hasn't even been drafted yet in Sam Howell of UNC.
Ooh. Yeah, that was something it was funny. I was in a weird spot last night because I'd only slept like 5 hours the day before.
And I wanted Howell last night.
Yeah, I was looking at the board and I'm like, it was a part of the second round where I'm looking at it. And I'm like, there's been one quarterback taken so far. We're like in the mid part of the second round. Can Carolina just sit here and wait till the 4th round and draft Sam Howell? Like that was my thought for most of the night. And then I was like, I think I even tweeted it. I was like, I'm gonna be really
Desmond, that was their thought. Yeah, I think that was their thought too, because as they watched the draft unfolded, it looked to me like they said, okay, we know who we want. Okay. And once Malik was taken, I think by Tennessee, at that moment that you saw them make that move to trade up, they said, oh no, we're one person closer than losing the guy that we want. Now it's time to make the move. I think they held out until a quarterback was taken to make that move, the trade. They were hoping, I think, to land Matt Corral at whatever. I think they were 90th and they went up 4 spots.
They traded with the Patriots to get up in there. Yeah,
I think they were holding out to see if they could get him at 90 without making a move.
It felt that way. Brandon, before I flip it over to Panthers draft, was there a surprise to you in this draft? Someone that might have went way higher and you thought that they originally would have gone so far, as we're about halfway through it?
Honestly, I was pretty surprised by the lineman from Northern Iowa that went in the first round.
Oh, the dude the Patriots traded up for, yeah.
Yeah, the fact that they traded up for him, covering NDSU football up here, they're in the Missouri Valley Conference as well. So I saw the kid play at Northern Iowa, and I didn't really think he was too dominant. Like, he was solid, but I was kind of surprised. But I think, the Patriots always get those guys who we think aren't going to perform, and then they find some systematical fit for him. So, the kid's got good feet, and he's really, really good hands, strong hands. He can open up some holes. So I think it was a good pick. I was surprised that they traded up. One guy that I thought was going to go first round was a guy from NDSU, and that's Christian Watson, who I think could be a top 3 wide receiver in this draft. The Packers may have got this. Yeah, the Packers got him. I think the first pick of the second round. I think it was like the 34th pick or something.
It was early.
Yeah,
it was early in the second.
Yeah, you're talking about a kid that's like 6'3", 4'4" speed, big hands. Had one of the best Senior Bowls and combines of any receiver. Really shot up some draft boards. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be really pleased because he's got that speed that can really bust open a defense. I love that pick for the Packers. Could be the steal of the draft.
It was funny too. I'm glad you mentioned that that Patriots pick, because I saw video last night. They were showing video of the Rams general manager and head coach Sean McVay. They were at the table talking about their pick, and like dead in the middle of them talking about whatever, the GM is looking at the screen. He's like, "Oh man, what's the dude's name? We were just talking about the lineman that went way early in the first round that the Patriots traded up for. What's his name again?"
I forgot it. I was trying to think of it. Yeah, the kid from Iowa.
From Tennessee, Chattanooga, and like they were sitting there, and the GM goes, "Oh man, Strange just went off the board," and like you see Sean McVay's face just like light up. He's like, "Are you serious? Oh my gosh, who got him?" And it's like the Patriots are like, "Oh man," and it's like we were just sitting here talking about how Strange might still be there at 130 for us, and they start laughing or whatever. So apparently a lot of teams knew about Cole Strange, but the Patriots had another weird pick. I was going back and forth, and it was in the second round. They traded up again. I'm trying to find the pick. Patriots traded back up into the round to get a wide receiver that I'd never heard of before. And it made me think last night, okay, this is a question I'm going to ask the panel. Do we give Bill Belichick too much credit for his draft day wheeling and dealing? Because some of these dudes, it was Tyquan Thornton from Baylor. They traded back in with Kansas City to get up to pick 50 in the second round. And I'm looking at Tyquan Thornton's stuff here. He was a senior at Baylor, 6'2", 181 pounds. So he's got decent size. Oh, I see why. He ran a 4.28 40. That's why they went up to go get him.
Well, I think speed's overrated sometimes, and I don't think people look at it. And I think there's receivers that don't necessarily have the speed, but when you get into the NFL, don't get me wrong, it's nice to have a speedster on your team, but it's more about running routes and running specific routes correctly. You can be fast, but if you can't run a route effectively, you're not going to be able to play in the NFL.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. But I do. The Patriots, they were looking to add speed on both sides. You can tell from that pick trading up into there. And then it's funny because the Panthers, they didn't have a second day pick. They didn't have a second or third round pick. They had traded off the second round pick to acquire Sam Darnold last year to the Jets. And then they traded off their third round pick last year to acquire cornerback CJ Henderson, who was a top 10 pick the year before from Miami. So they didn't have those two picks, but General Manager Scott Fitter basically was like, I wouldn't tune away if you're a Panther fan from the second and third round tonight just because we don't have a pick right now. He's basically signaling out they were going to try to do something to get back in there, and the Panthers did exactly that. First, before I talk about Matt Corral, I got to talk about the first pick they got, Ewkwonu from NC State. Me and Skylar Callahan have been doing the Believe in Panther podcast every Tuesday, and for about 8 weeks now, we've been mock drafting who we thought the Panthers could get. Never once did we say Ewkwonu at 6 because we just assumed he would be gone. Like it never crossed our mind that he would still be sitting there. In all the scenarios we ran, and this dude might be the best. Actually, he probably is the best tackle in this draft. He's kind of a cross between Evan Neal and Charles Cross. Pancake machine. I know, Rod. I know you love the dudes in the trenches that like to get dirty and pancake people. We talk about it all the time with the East Forsyth offensive line. Whenever we can find a left tackle that can, do that blind side, run down the field, throw you in a dumpster type thing. That's Ewkwonu. Like, I don't know if anybody's seen any of his highlights, but my man be putting dudes in dumpsters and school buses. Like he rolls people down the field. Like he'll literally put you on the ground, and then he will look for you on the ground to fall on you or to push you further. Like he got a little nastiness to him, and
he does.
To just sit there at 6 and for him to fall in their lap, he might be the best player in this draft. Like,
I didn't think he'd go past 3, to be honest.
Yeah, I was just like, why? Like, it got all 3 of the left tackles were still on the board at 6, and all the quarterbacks. But we did a mock for Believe last week, and I said Malik Willis at 6. But then when we did our podcast episode last week, we did a mock of the top 10. And that was the first time in 2 months where when we got to Carolina's pick, I was like, you know what? It feels like we're reaching to get Malik Willis at 6 at this point. Like, just based on what was around him, that was the first time I was like, well, if Malik Willis is there, we probably shouldn't draft him at 6 because that might end up biting us in the ass in the end. Like, that's just too high. And then it played out that way. As no quarterbacks were selected in the first round, it was just a run on defense and wide receivers. There's like no wide receivers left as we go into the 4th round. Like, they pretty much took them all in the first 3 rounds. But
yeah, I think there were either 17 or 19 wide receivers drafted on the first 2 days, which I think is unheard of in the NFL. But when you go back to Carolina's draft pick at number 6, you're right, Des. This guy is nasty, and he's also athletic. I saw some film on him where it looked like he dived at somebody's feet, but it was actually part of a screenplay where he went down to make it look like he's on the ground. Then he jumps up and runs 25 yards and makes a block 25 yards down the field to spring the running back or the wide receiver right into the end zone. And I was like,
he pancaked
wow. Yeah, he did. He did. And I was like, wow, Carolina is doing the right thing. Matt Rule had to draft the lineman because he has Sam Darnold. So I never felt like the Carolina Panthers were going to draft a quarterback simply because it will make Matt Rule look like he doesn't know what he's doing. If you go and you get Sam Darnold and you bring him in, and then you go and get another quarterback in the draft, has a rookie head coach coming from the college league to the NFL, it makes it look like he has no idea what he's doing. So he has to stay with his pick of Sam Darnold, going to get Sam and making sure he builds around Sam to keep Sam safe. Because last year, what happened to him? He got hurt. And so, that's something that cannot happen this year, or at least Matt Rule is going to be out if it does.
The Panthers, they said, Scott Fitter said at the beginning of this offseason, their number 1 priority was offensive line. They were going to fix it because that was the main problem with the Panthers last year. They just couldn't get out of their own way because the offensive line was just horrific. And they have done that. I will say one thing about this Panther front office: as much crap we give them in season with some of the weird in-game things that Matt Rule was doing, like weird timeouts, the clock running down for no reason, weird play calls on 4th and 1 or whatever. Those are all in-game coaching things. Those can be changed. And they changed the whole coaching staff. They brought in more experience. Ben McAdoo's now the offensive coordinator. Eli Manning's best couple of years as a Giant was with Ben McAdoo. So I could see Darnold or Corral or whoever playing fairly well. It's not really a risk kind of offense. It's pretty basic, but if you've got the skill set and you've got people in that offense that can score points, that can do some things, by getting Corral, you put some pressure on Darnold. Because I feel like, looking back on it, maybe it wasn't fair to Darnold that we put so much on him coming in, because he was following behind a Cam Newton. who by all accounts is the best quarterback in franchise history. And two, he hadn't really had a situation like he had coming in. He was 3-0 to start the season and looked fairly good until McCaffrey went down. When McCaffrey went down, the bottom kind of fell out for him. So I don't know if it's McCaffrey that makes these quarterbacks look better, or maybe defense is just caught up to Darnold by week 4 and week 5 and just kind of figured him out, and it was on from there. But I do like the fact that they did not trade for Baker Mayfield, because they were on the phone, according to Joe Person, a friend of the program, they were on the phone with the Browns all night last night Fitterer was on the phone with the Browns all night trying to get the Baker Mayfield deal done, and it almost got done. They just couldn't agree on how much the Browns were going to pay of Baker's salary. And then Matt Rule is talking to Bill Belichick on the other side of the room for pick 90 or whatever they ended up getting from them, trying to figure out the trade parameters. So once the quarterback started falling down, the Panthers decided they would much rather have a rookie quarterback who they're going to have to only pay $5 million over the next 4 years total, as opposed to getting Baker and come in here, another retread, and have him battle with Sam Darnold. You have the same situation you had last year. They just didn't want to go that route. They wanted a rookie quarterback they could kind of groom as their own, which I totally understand. I don't know enough about Matt Corral, so hopefully Skylar will be on hour 2. He can kind of clue me in on what this dude's about, because I didn't watch a lot of Ole Miss last year.
He's the goods. Like, he's got some upside. I think he's the third best outside of Malik Willis and Sam Howell. I think Matt Corral is probably the third best quarterback in the draft.
What did you guys think about Kenny Pickett going to Pittsburgh at pick 20? They didn't have to trade up for him or anything. Hometown guy, played at Pitt.
Overrated.
Little hands. Like, I don't know if he fits the Pittsburgh system. Does he? I mean, I guess he does. I mean, he's from Pittsburgh.
Well, now, anybody fits that system because they have no one. So, I mean, they have to find someone. And I had Pickett going there at the 20th pick in my mock draft. He's a hometown kid. I mean, it adds a lot of excitement. It's going to keep people in the stands. Plus, Kenny Pickett is a good quarterback. The problem with Pickett is that he tends to make mistakes when he gets pressure on him. When the pocket unfolds, he sometimes stresses out and makes some silly mistakes. They can go ahead and teach him, how to step up in the pocket, how to handle that situation with film and with, good people around him. I think they did a good job by picking Kenny Pickett.
I think that we'll I was a little concerned that the Panthers were going to reach and grab him at 6, because that was kind of the smoke screens that were going on out there. But when it got when it got to the point they got to pick 6 and all 3 of the left tackles were there, because I wanted Evan Neal, because I just thought he would be there at 6.
Either way, you don't lose.
Yeah, so it was like, and shout out to the Giants, because I think the Giants, they had picked 5 and 7, and I think honestly, if Thibodeau had been there at 6, I think the Panthers would have picked Thibodeau from Oregon, and I think that's why the Giants grabbed him at 5. Knowing that Carolina was right behind them with 3 left tackles on the board, and the Giants needed a left tackle. So either way, the Giants were going to win, because whoever the Panthers picked, either Evan Neal or Ewkwonu were going to still be there at 7 because of what they did. So the Giants, by picking Thibodeau 5th, set themselves up for one of the great left tackles at 7 and didn't have to trade or anything. And I felt it was crazy that no one was trading up to get into the top 10 to get anybody, really. So that was kind of crazy. Derek Stingley going 3rd to Houston was an eye-opener. That actually opened it up for everything else that happened behind it, because no one had Stingley going 3rd to Houston, like, at all.
A lot of people had Stingley's stock falling down tremendously. I mean, he had a great junior season, but I think his senior year, they were expecting a little bit more from him. And
he didn't play, I don't believe, did he?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. They were expecting more from him. And, to get nothing, it just kind of, I didn't want to make it so blunt like that on the show, Des.
Hey, we do a rundown. We give him a real. Like, hey, he wasn't even out there. So, but hey, for him to do that and still go 3rd in this draft, I know LSU is like cornerback U and all that good stuff, but I don't know. We'll see. That felt like Houston.
You know what? I had him 3rd. If you look at my mock draft, I did pick him right. And the reason why they needed a safety, and I said, who is the best safety in this draft right now? And if you looked from the closest safety that can handle an NFL scheme, I thought it was Derek Stingley.
He can play both cornerback and safety. And I know Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame was kind of looked at as the top safety, but I felt he was going to Baltimore. Like, as I looked at the draft order, it just looked like a perfect fit. But like, for where he was and where he was going to land.
Yeah, and I think Hamilton fell because of his 40 time. You know, that being a DB, they expect you to definitely be under 4.5. So, and he wasn't, he wasn't there. So,
see, I had Detroit taking him second, Kyle Hamilton, but they never did.
Larry, ain't that high for a safety? Number 2. But then again, if you need everything, it don't really matter.
Right? So I mean,
really matter
you're rolling the dice. When you need everything.
That's true.
And, you got to remember that the top 5 teams aren't your best teams in the NFL. Remember, so they usually need a lot more than the teams at the bottom 5. So you're right, but you look at even if you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what solidified that offense was when they got safety Antoine Winfield. So safety is like your quarterback of the defense, and I don't know. I mean, all of these guys were basing them on what they've done in college. Some of them are going to surprise you that we know. Tom Brady was never thought of being a great quarterback in the NFL. He was picked in the 7th round. Then you have guys in the 1st round that are doing jail time right now.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, and on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, the top overall number 1 NFL picks of the past 20 years, we'll kind of give our opinion of who that might be. There's some pretty good ones in here. And coming up later on in the show, Brendan Marks from The Athletic will talk UNC and Duke hoops recruiting. Skylar Callahan for Sports Illustrated will stop by. We'll dig deeper into Matt Corral, the 3rd round selection of the Panthers quarterback that'll be joining that room with Sam Darnold. How good of a chance does he have to be the starter on day 1? Plus winners and losers to the NFL draft. Halfway through it, the draft will be back on at noon. We're on until noon, so we'll get you ready for that as well. You are listening to The Rundown on WWBG 1470 AM and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
You're listening to The Rundown with Desmond Johnson.
Blue Naples Pizzeria in Kernersville is now hiring. Come work for one of the best Italian restaurants in the Triad. Currently hiring dishwashers, cooks, front cashiers, and more. Great hours, great pay. Give them a call at 336-993-7707 or stop by and inquire at 1519 Union Cross Road in Kernersville. Start working this week. Blue Naples Pizza.
This is Coach Rez, head coach of your Carolina Cobras Arena football team, the 2018 National Arena League champions. Join us for our 4th year in the Snake Pit at the Greensboro Coliseum. Be a part of the Carolina Cobras tailgating group before every home game starting April 30th. Season tickets are now on sale for as low as 2 for $128. You can reach the ticket office at 336-455-7232 or at carolinacobras.com. Fear the Fang.
Find your next car at Auto Store of North Carolina in Walkertown. Their goal is to make car shopping and car buying experience fast, friendly, and easy. They have helped hundreds of customers get behind the wheel of a newer, reliable, quality used car, and they could help you too. Stop by and speak with one of their sales professionals today and drive away with your new car. The Auto Store of North Carolina, 4964 Reedsville Road in Walkertown. Give them a call at 336-595-8550 and view the current inventory of vehicles at autostoreofnc.com.
Ideacom NC, a trusted telecommunications company with 60 years of experience in unified communications. Ideacom is about more than just phone systems. They provide a full range of communication solutions. Whether your business is big or small, from churches to schools to fire departments, depend on the best in cabling, phone systems, IT support, and more from Ideacom for Central North Carolina. Top-rated customer service that cares about your business needs. Check out all the host of solutions at IdeacomNC.com or call at 336-854-4455. Ideacom NC.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Kuhn Godfrey. I'm running at large for the Board of Education, making sure all students have quality, accessible, and equitable education is my priority. It would be an honor to serve our community as a member of the board. Vote Sabrina Kuhn Godfrey for BOE during early voting or on primary day, May 17th.
Paid for by Sabrina Kuhn Godfrey for BOE. area softball stars. Register for the Diamond Star Softball Transfer Portal Showcase June 14th and 15th at Bob Lewis Park in Asheville, North Carolina. This showcase is for any player currently in the transfer portal or any JUCO player. Get the opportunity to showcase your skills in front of college coaches from all levels. Over the 2-day event, players participate in evaluations such as softball skills and metrics by College Sports Evaluations, drill and team practice participation, and playing in 3 games. For more information, visit DiamondStarEvents.net or email Coach Ben McKinney at bmckinney@DiamondStarEvents.net. TRSR Triad Hot Deals, the top deals on sports tickets, dining, and fun in the Triad. Visit TRSRTriadHotDeals.com right now and sign up to get the best area deals in the Triad every week. Powered by Tobacco Road Sports Radio and SportsCarolinaMonthly.com. This month, save big on Carolina Cobras season tickets. Go to 7 home games this season for only $45. That's an $80 value. Buy your 2022 season ticket package now with this exclusive deal from Triad Hot Deals. Visit TRSRTriadHotDeals.com. Visit the sports tab and secure your package. Limited number available. That's TRSRTriadHotDeals.com.
You're listening to The Rundown with Desmond Johnson.
Welcome back into the rundown here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com and WWBG 1470 AM here in the Triad. Shout out to everyone that's been touching with us, giving us comments and compliments or whatnot on the rundown and other sports talk shows we have on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, franchise players on Fridays, along with The Score with Brett Wiseman. Frankly Speaking Sports throughout the week. We are your home for Triad Sports here at Tobacco Road Sports Radio. A little bit later on today, actually, pretty loaded lineup for Saturday with us. You got the pit stop with Brett Wiseman, special guest Randy Pettit, the longtime track announcer at Bowman Gray. They'll recap everything that happened last Saturday at Bowman Gray during opening weekend and get you ready for tonight for week 2. Thomas Bryce and Sports Wire Radio live at 2:30. That's a 3-hour show throughout the afternoon today. And then at 6:30, the Snake Pit with head coach Josh Resignalo from the Carolina Cobras, hosted by Ryan Stone from World of Beer in Greensboro. And then, of course, the nightcap tonight, NAL football live from the Greensboro Coliseum, 7 p.m. Carolina Cobras 1-0 in the season, taking on the Orlando Predators. JP Mundy and Ryan Stone on the call for that matchup. I'll be in the house too. If I'm not mistaken, PD Pablo will be there tonight as well, doing halftime, the pregame. I think he runs out with the team. So we're going to have a party at the Coliseum tonight. Cobras and Predators. You can get in for as little as $10 if you go to SportsCarolinaMonthly.com and grab one of those discounted single game tickets. You can get those right now. Right now, though, on the rundown, Hot Rod Funderburk, Brandon Blakeney, and Larry Frank joining me. And Thursday, when the first round of the NFL draft took place, and the kid from Georgia that went first overall, Trayvon Walker.
Yep.
Yeah, and they'd been talking Aiden Hutchinson for like 2 months was going to be the de facto number one. And in the very last week or so, Walker went up the board, and Jacksonville got him at number 1, which was kind of surprising to me. And it made me think of who's the best overall number 1 pick of the past like 20 years or so. I have a couple that you could put up there, but I wanted to hear from everybody else first. Larry, let's start with you. Who's when you think of from 2000, I said the past 20 years, but really 21st century. So from the year 2000 onward, who's the one dude that was the number 1 overall pick that you would say was the best of the bunch?
Well, I don't think you can judge Joey Burrows yet, only because he's only played a couple of seasons. So, I mean, yes, he looks good so far. But, and I'm going back. I'm trying to remember 2000, who was drafted. But wasn't Cam Newton in the 21st century? If I believe correctly. 2 guys that stick out to me. They're both quarterbacks. And you can argue Eli Manning was there. He won 2 Super Bowls. And from Ole Miss. And then you got Cam Newton, of course, from Auburn. I would say if I had to pick between them, yes, I know Eli's won 2 Super Bowls, but I think when you look in that prime, who was the best pick, I would have to say Cam Newton has to definitely be up there in my opinion.
I wanted somebody else to say Cam before me because I know people know I'm a Cam homer. So I appreciate you, Larry.
No, I mean, it's true. I mean, look, if you look at all the first round draft picks, I mean, nobody really sticks out in the 20. You know, people will say Matthew Stafford now, but when you really look at it, who had the best career-wise? Cam Newton. Who had the most championships? I think, you know, from a quarterback standpoint, you have to say Eli Manning beat the Patriots twice. But if you look at Eli Manning, his two best games happen to come on the biggest stage, where Cam's best game did not come on the biggest, scenario in the Super Bowl. But I would say when Cam came up, man, I would turn my TV to watch Cam Newton play. I was I don't even know where I was when Cam Newton came up, but I remember it didn't matter where I was. I think I was in Tampa then. Cam Newton's on, I'm going to go watch him. He was one of those guys that just from the get-go just got me excited. When he first started his career, I believe he ran the ball a lot more than he did later on in his career, but he was always fun to watch play.
Yeah, speaking of Cam, it's actually pretty surprising. He's the only number one pick since 2000 to be named NFL MVP, which I thought was pretty crazy. Wow. He won it in 2015. He has 58 career rushing touchdowns. That's the most by a quarterback ever. 4,806 career rushing yards is the third highest total for a quarterback. He's 18 touchdown passes shy of 200 for his career and less than 1,000 passing yards shy of the 30,000 mark. So, Cam still waiting on a home. Hell, he might be coming back to Carolina. We'll talk to Skylar Callahan about that in hour number 2. As for Eli, basically he defeated the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl, and he's a 2-time Super Bowl winner. Well, he's a multiple-time Super Bowl MVP. The only other people that have ever done that are Terry Bradshaw, Bart Starr, Tom Brady, Joe Montana. So that's a pretty good company to be in if you're Eli Manning. Brandon, what do you think here? Out of since 2000, who's maybe the best or one of your favorite overall number one picks?
Right. I was going to go Cam Newton, honestly, but that one's taken. So I would say if we're just talking about favorite players and impact on the game, I'm going to go Michael Vick. That was the first NFL jersey that I got. I think that he just kind of revolutionized the black quarterback in the NFL and kind of made it a path for guys like Lamar Jackson to be in the league and, be respected. I think that he probably would have had more success, obviously, minus the jail time, and if the Falcons would have kind of catered the system. Because Vick was out there freelancing. He was out there playing backyard football. The offense wasn't really catered to him and his skill set. So I think he would have had even more success if they would have really catered that offense. But it was such a new thing. He was so dynamic. I mean, we weren't used to the quarterback being the fastest guy on the field, the most athletic on the field. So he really paved the way for another guy like Kyler Murray, where guys can just take off. And when quarterbacks are faster than safeties, I think that, to me, his impact on the game culturally is kind of like Allen Iverson in the NBA.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah. So for me, you growing up as a kid in the backyard, everybody wants to be Michael Vick. Like, everybody, quarterback revolutionized the 7, like had the cleats, the Madden 04 controller, probably the best Madden player. He was like a creative player in Madden, man. Like, Vick was just unreal and just exciting to watch, man, how he was just moving and grooving and making people miss. I mean, you couldn't touch him. So, yeah, I got to go Mike Vick.
Two things. Thomas Davis was a Carolina Panther because of Michael Vick. I still remember to this day, they draft Thomas Davis was a safety coming out of Georgia that could play linebacker. And the Panthers specifically drafted him in the first round to spy on Michael Vick. Like, that was literally why he was brought to Carolina. And of course he blossomed into a all-time great with the Panthers, but that was the legit reason why John Fox drafted him, was because Michael Vick was killing us. Like, literally just killing us. He had a play where this dude, it wasn't goal line. They were like at the 5-yard line or something. And he takes off, I think it was a night game, and he takes off running. I think Julius Peppers is in front of him. And he jumps from like the 5-yard line and like glides in the air like this, like to the end zone. Like, it looked like a computer glitch. Like, his leg never touched the ground for like 5 yards. Like, he's just floating in the air. And Julius Peppers just shakes his head when the play is over. Like, what are we supposed to do to defend this? Like, the dude was unreal. And to Brandon's point, if he didn't serve the jail sentence, he'd probably be much higher on this list. He's kind of the template for today's African-American quarterback in the NFL. He kind of showed that you could do it. Cam took it to the next level where you could do more than just running around, because fun fact with him, Michael Vick never threw more than 21 touchdowns in any season he played in, which is pretty nuts, actually, when you think back on it. Although back in 2001, 2002, they weren't throwing the ball as much as they throw it today. Was it 05 when he was on the cover of Madden? Was it Madden?
It was 04.
04.
Yeah, Ray Lewis was 05.
Yeah, Michael Vick in 2004 Madden was like Bo Jackson in Tecmo Bowl. Like, he got to that status of like those video game characters that are just like athletes that are just almost unfair to use. That dude was that. Like, he was that much faster than all the other players in that game. He had a cannon of an arm, but it was like a water hose. Like, he couldn't control it sometimes until later in his career when he got with Andy Reid in Philly. Yeah. And I still remember he had that game against the Redskins where it was like a perfect game pretty much. He was like 400 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first play of the game was like a 98-yard bomb to Deshaun Jackson, like right up the middle of the field. Like, it was crazy watching that game. He literally pitched a perfect game that night. So I can take Mike Vick. They kind of took all the good ones, Rod. What are you thinking here for top picks for the past 20 years?
Yeah, I definitely had Michael Vick as number one on my list because, like you guys said, he pretty much revolutionized the quarterback position. I mean, we'd never seen a quarterback play, and the talent that Mike Vick had was just astronomical. But I'm going to have to also go with the quarterback. He didn't really have a very, very long career, but he had a pretty good career the time that he was there. And he also was living up to a lot of hype. And that is the heir apparent to Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. You know, Andrew Luck, to me, was a quarterback who had a lot of pressure on him coming behind a Peyton Manning, who had, won a Super Bowl for the Colts. He's a royalty. He comes from that royal family, the Manning family. And but Andrew Luck came in, and in his first 3 seasons, he made the Pro Bowl. He also, took the Colts to 3 consecutive 11-5 seasons. And he took the Colts to an AFC championship game in 2014. He led the league with 40 touchdown passes that year. He had over 4,700 yards passing. But he had injuries. And, sometimes injuries can really hurt your career. I mean, playing quarterback during this time, I don't think all the rules had changed just yet the way that they are now. Yeah. But he was really, but he took some punishment.
He took some beatings.
Yeah, he did. Mm-hmm. He did. And the quarterback position, when you're taking punishment and you're hitting or having those blindside hits, football is already a brutal sport. But I saw Andrew Luck take some serious shots, and injuries just put him out. But I feel like, just like Michael Vick, if Andrew Luck could have played a little bit longer, I think we could have seen, Andrew Luck break some more records. I think he could have taken the Colts back to another Super Bowl, and I think he really could have been that quarterback that the Colts were looking for after Peyton Manning. So, after you guys took all the other good players that I wanted, Andrew Luck was the other quarterback that was on my list.
It's
and
funny.
Desmond never saw a quarterback built like him before. Like, dude was built like a Greek god too. Like, Andrew Luck was jacked.
Yeah. And he almost was a Panther. He went back to Stanford for senior year when the Panthers had the number 1 overall pick, and they had to settle for some dude named Cam Newton instead, and you go from there. But I thought about Andrew Luck. It's funny too because it's almost like the league has forgotten about him because he was the number 1 pick in 2012. But he played how many years? Like 5, 6?
I think it was like he retired in 2017. I think it was. Yeah. But I think 2015 like he missed. I want to say half of 2015 maybe.
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah,
he quit at age 29.
29. And it raises a great debate. We talked about Eli Manning, Cam Newton when we first started this segment. What gets an individual to the Hall of Fame? Is it winning championships or is it statistics? And my example is Eli Manning was not a great elite quarterback. He was an average.
Yes.
He has an average quarterback. I think he had a 500 record, if I'm correct, as a quarterback. Yep. But the 2 championships he won is going to get him in the Hall of Fame. To me,
Especially
he's
'cause
not a
ODB,
Hall
yeah.
of Fame quarterback. He is a championship quarterback. Once again, on the biggest stage, he delivered. And it's a great debate for another time. But what gets somebody like Tom Brady? Okay, he's won 7 championships. He's a great quarterback. But there's guys that win championships that I feel aren't the greatest. Just, Trent Dilfer won a championship with the Ravens. Okay, but he's not a Hall of Fame quarterback.
That's true. I mean, and like you look at Cam, we've had this debate before. Does Cam Newton's resume, is it enough for him to get into the Hall of Fame? I've said yes. Bill Parcells said it once. If you've won league MVP, that means you were the best in the league for a solid year. And that should be enough to be entry into the Hall of Fame. If you were the greatest in your sport for one season, regardless of what happened before or after that season, that should be your golden ticket to get into the Hall of Fame. And
you're still great. And that even says you're the greatest.
Yep. Yeah, it does say you're the greatest, but there is a player who's probably not going to get into the Hall of Fame. But I tell you what, he was probably the best player that I have seen at his position, and he didn't even begin the season on time every year, and that's Bo Jackson. I mean, Bo Jackson was a guy who tore it.
Ever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. To me, I would put him in the Hall of Fame, but he's not going to get there.
I think about a guy like Chris Johnson, too. CJ2K ran for 2,000 yards in the season. I mean, he's probably a guy that won't make it either, but he kind of transitioned position too.
Because this so I'm gonna write this down. We're gonna do this on another show. Because I gotta get to this Durant here.
A can of
so what am I calling this? Dudes.
Great players who may never make the Hall of Fame.
And the thing with Bo is he just got hurt. I mean, if he would have never had that hip injury, the sky's the limit.
It's really his fault. It was really Bo's fault in the end. If you watch Bo, you don't know Bo, the 30 for 30. It's the same injury that Tua had. Yeah, he just didn't get checked out for like a month. So like he popped his own hip back into socket, which you're not supposed to be able to do. You're not supposed to be able to rip it out of socket. Let's start right there. Like he ripped it out with his own strength and then rolled it back in and then didn't tell anyone really for like a month. So there was no circulation of blood in that hip. And it basically just started to decay. By the time he started to complain to trainers about it, the damage had already been done. Tua Tagovailoa had the same pretty much exact injury, but they knew it as soon as it happened. He had the surgery, after the swelling went down, and now he's playing in the NFL. If Bo had said something that day or got x-rays that day, who knows? Maybe he's still playing, but not still playing, but he would have continued to play. So I don't think he would have been playing in 2022. That would have been wow.
Who knows? Bo could have done anything.
Bo could have made the Hall of Fame.
Bo knows if he been playing or not. But
he could have made the Hall of Fame in baseball and football.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny too. Another topic I want to get into as we get into the dog days of summer about how high school kids no longer, once they get out of high school, they don't play multiple sports anymore. You don't see a Deion Sanders or a Bo Jackson or someone when you get to this level. I guess Kyler Murray had the shot to do it. But
Pat Covington too, the small forward for the Milwaukee Bucks who won a title. He was a first-round pick in baseball as well and went to the NBA.
And I'm curious as to why we don't see that anymore. Why we don't see dual sport players in the pros anymore. And I think that a lot of it has to do, once you are in high school, you kind of get filtered towards a specific sport after a while. Perfect example, over at East Forsyth, Xavier Isaac on the baseball team. He's the best slugger. He's signed to Florida. He's a senior. One of the top baseball players in the state, but the dude looks like he could play offensive line or tight end at least. He's like 6'5", 250 or something nuts like that. And any other time, if this was 10 years before, Coach Willard would probably be recruiting Boy to be playing in the fall and then go play baseball in the spring. But they're all individualized now on their sports, and I guess it's better for the kids, but for the fans, we don't get
for the owners. The owners don't want to. I mean, look what happened to Bo. A great example there. I mean, if I'm an owner and you're a number one star and potential in the NFL, do I want you playing another sport and getting hurt? Some of them have it in their contracts where they're not even allowed to go out and play a pickup basketball game. Because
that's right.
Yep,
that's right.
Because you seen people like Jay Williams and others got hurt off the court doing dumb stuff. So yeah, it's in there.
I think it's the rise of youth sports too, though. Just real quick, it's year round now. All these sports and the training in the league, so it takes away.
Actually, you know what? But I'm not going to take a break, which is the beauty of doing this the way that we do it. I'm going to let us roll through the first of the hour, and I'm going to go over to the next topic, which is actually NBA, because I've been saving this all week. I was saying this all week, and I don't even want to wait through a commercial break to get to it. I'm not so much going to talk about the NBA playoffs in terms of the matchups, because we do have our semifinals set, and I will run through that in just a bit. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the notion of NBA super teams and how I think it's run its course. I think we're seeing the end of super teams right now. The Bucks won the NBA title last year. The Suns are the number one team overall, top team in the West. They were basically built through the draft. Golden State, you see what Golden State is doing. Jordan Poole was in the G League last year, and now he's part of this lethal weapon 3 that Stephen A. Smith is trying to call him, which I kind of like. Golden State is basically like Golden State pre-Kevin Durant with Harrison Barnes, except it's Jordan Poole instead of Harrison Barnes, and they're actually more deadlier than they were then, and because they're a little bit older, everybody kind of knows the roles. Steph is healthy, Clay's getting back into a groove, Draymond's fairly healthy, the bench is deep. We haven't even seen Wiseman all year, the number 1 overall pick from last year. He's been out the entire season, so like Golden State is doing their thing. Then you got like the Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets, who were basically constructed on the fly to surround 2 or 3 guys. Which one is the bigger disappointment? The Lakers not getting above 500 and not making the playoffs at all, or the Brooklyn Nets, who, I don't know, where do we begin? Kyrie Irving wasn't available at the beginning of the year. They actually were pretty good at the beginning of the year. If you go back and look at the Eastern standings, they were like number 1 or number 2, and in a groove until Durant got hurt. He was out, so he missed games. Kyrie starts playing a little bit because of that, so the Nets go back against their word saying he wasn't going to play until Durant got hurt, and then they had to have him play, and then he was only playing like once or twice a week. Something happened with him and Harden. Harden
was beating him one-on-one.
It had to be more than that, though. He could, I mean, he had to be like smack to him or something for Harden to be like, you know what? Because it got to a point where James Harden was out there by himself, and so Harden leaves and links up in Philly with his dude Daryl Morey or whatever, and Joel Embiid. That's a whole other conversation. What's going on with Philly? They did advance the other night to the semifinals.
Not anymore.
Yeah, the Nets though, like, I guess I have an issue with. I don't really have so much of an issue with Durant right in this moment. It's really more Kyrie, because Kyrie almost feels like Kyrie thinks he's a general manager of the Brooklyn Nets and that he has too much power. That exit interview he did the other day where he's like, me and Kev, we'll continue to manage this team. As soon as he said it, I was like, ooh, I don't like that. I don't like the way you said that. I don't like the implication behind it. Does Kyrie think he have too much power? Like, what are your thoughts of the Nets going forward? What should they do? Because they can't really trade Kyrie Irving. Like, who's going to take him? Like, he hasn't played a full 82 game season. I don't think ever. I think he's only played more than 60 games his second year in the league. And that's it. He's basically available 2/3 of the time if you're lucky. Now, when he's out there, top 3-point guard, top handles in the league, probably one of the best finishers in the league. But I just can't get behind some of the stuff he says and some of the stuff he does. It drives me nuts that someone that's so talented would think that they've done anything. He hasn't done anything without LeBron James on his squad, really, when you look at his career after he left. Boston, that fell apart. And now this Nets thing, everyone keeps picking them to go to the finals the past couple of years, and they haven't even been able to sniff them, really. Losing first round in a sweep this year. Give me your thoughts on the Nets here. What should they do? Like, they've got a couple ways they can go about doing this, but they got to extend Kyrie Irving probably this offseason. If Kevin Durant's like, yo, you need to extend Kyrie, if you're the Nets, do you do it?
Absolutely.
Like $50 million a year.
You're already all in on this team right now, but I think the surrounding pieces, like, they've got a couple good pieces, but I think they messed up letting Dinwiddie go. Blake Griffin is way too old. Drummond comes in. He was a solid addition. But the thing with Kyrie this year, he was healthy. He just wasn't vaccinated. So obviously he could have played more games. I think, going forward now that it's more lenient with the COVID-19 rules, because it was crazy that visiting players could come into Brooklyn and play, but their own players couldn't play. Which
I agree with that. Yeah,
ridiculous.
That was wild. It was crazy that you're playing without a mask on the court, and as soon as you check out to sit down, you got to put a mask on. Like, right. I thought that was weird. Like,
right. If you trade Kyrie, what are you gonna get that's better what he's producing right now as far as talent-wise. You're not going to get another superstar for him, so you're going to, bank on the draft and try to pair Kevin Durant. And I don't think this is all on Kyrie either, because Kevin Durant was locked in hell by Jason Tatum that whole series. He got played.
Jason Tatum arrived. Yeah, Jason Tatum arrived in this series. He top 10 right now in the league, maybe top 5.
Yeah.
Jason Tatum,
and with Boston, I think that was a great defensive plan that they had for Kevin Durant. If you notice, they doubled him as soon as he got the ball. When he received the ball, they were on him like stink on you know what as soon as the ball came into him. I mean, and there was nothing he could do. Normally, he could turn around and shoot real quick, but he couldn't. They were swiping at the ball. He was surrounded, and they even forced him to make bad passes that got intercepted. They forced him to make cross-court passes or cross-court half passes that got intercepted. And that was, to me, that was just a great defensive plan. And you better watch out for Boston in these playoffs.
They got the length to deal with them, man. I mean, Jason Tatum's like 6'9", Jaylen Brown's like 6'7", 6'8". They have the length on the wing to really handle that.
And they might be getting Robert Williams back here pretty quick too. The funny thing, we were talking about this on the score yesterday. This Celtics team that's presently constructed, they basically could thank Brooklyn for it, because it was the trade of Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to the Nets that netted the Celtics all those draft picks that they had that they were sitting on that stretched out to like 2021 or something nuts like that. Like it went out 3, 4, 5 years, and they ended up getting Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, all these dudes off of those draft picks. So for them to turn around and eliminate the Nets basically with the team that they built off of the picks they got from the Nets specifically, it's just pretty wild. And I do agree, Brandon, the Celtics seem like the squad, especially with Middleton hurt with Milwaukee, because I would have just said Milwaukee and been done with it. But with no Middleton, I'm not sure if they have enough to get past the Celtics. I kind of want to see Celtics versus Golden State, actually, or Phoenix. Either one would be fine. But I want to see Golden State kind of redo this, because they're making me remember why I was a Golden State fan before they landed Kevin Durant. Like, I love Golden State, the way they play. Steph Curry's one of my favorite players. I love that Clay's kind of getting back in the groove again. The Splash Brother, like all that stuff. I love that stuff. I love the way they play. When they got Durant, I felt like it was a cheat code. Like they knew they were good, and they were like, well, we got to beat LeBron. So you go out and get Kevin Durant. And me and Rod, we've been on this tip now for 3-4 years. Like, we just didn't respect the move that he went there when 2 years later he's leaving Golden State for the same reasons why me and Rod are screaming, why'd you go there in the first place? Like, you're never going to get the credit that you want completely because you're playing for Golden State. That same scenario where the Celtics are running, 2 at him at all times. Somebody showed a screenshot from his days in Golden State, and it's like Steph at the top and keep dribbling, and like there's 2 dudes on Steph, there's a dude on Clay, and you see Kevin Durant on the other side of the court like this behind the 3-point line. There's no one near him. Like there's nobody, because you can't cover, you can't double 3 dudes. So it's like people were like Durant's complaining about the defense because he ain't used to seeing it. Like the past couple of years, he played with the greatest shooting backcourt combination of all time, and he got shots whenever he wanted, and it elevated him. But I can't elevate him past a certain point because of that.
No, I
you know what I mean?
He's
like
a leader, man. To be honest,
he's not.
He's a great player, but he's not a leader. And if LeBron would have lost with that team, social media would have been challenging his legacy.
We'd have let off the show.
What I'm saying? Like they let Durant get away with stuff like that, and it kills me because he couldn't beat them last year. And then he's like, it's some young bucks. And shout out to Marcus Smart too, Defensive Player of the Year. Like he's risen, but Durant and Harden should have been enough last year. Him and Kyrie should have been enough this year.
Yeah, they really should have, considering, everything. That team was propped up to win. You had people picking them as an 8th seed coming out of the play-in to still make it to the NBA Finals, which I thought was insane because I'm like, this team hasn't shown us anything to suggest that they're going to get it together and just roll through the Eastern Conference when you got like Miami and Boston and the defending champs are Milwaukee. Kevin Durant is not the best player on the planet. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's Giannis. I can't even say his last name right now. It's Giannis. You know who I'm talking about. You know who that dude is. But everybody's been propping Kevin Durant. Oh, he's assumed the throne. I don't think he has. And to Brandon's point, neither Kyrie or Kevin Durant are leaders. Mm-hmm. Like, look at where they've been in Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant wasn't the alpha of that team. It was Russell Westbrook. That's why he left. He left Russell Westbrook there because of that very reason why. And then he goes to Golden State. He wasn't the alpha in Golden State. That's Draymond Green and Steph Curry. That was never his team. That's why he left, because he realized it would never be his team. He goes to Brooklyn, has an opportunity to be the alpha, and just isn't. Kyrie, same thing. In Cleveland, had it for 4 years without LeBron, never made the playoffs. I don't know if they won more than 20 games any of those 4 years. Gets LeBron. LeBron clearly is the alpha. And Kyrie decides he says he didn't want to be left there if LeBron left or whatever. I'm like, dude, you were there before he got there. Like, you were there for 4 years already. Like, you could have just stayed, you and Kevin Love, and been fine. No, he's got to leave and be the alpha someplace else. He goes to Boston. We know what happened there. Didn't work out. He wasn't the alpha of that team. Leaves there, goes to the Nets, and all this nonsense that happens here. Like, you're not a leader and not show up for the games because you don't want to take a vaccination shot that everybody else in the team sacrificed and took. Like, that's not leadership. And Kyrie constantly tries to portray himself as the general, and he's not a general. He's a soldier. Like, what's Kevin Durant's Twitter handle, Brandon?
Oh, Easy Money Sniper. Or no, it's KD Trey and then Easy Money Sniper on Instagram.
Snipers aren't generals. Snipers are soldiers. Snipers take orders. Snipers work on a clock. You know what I mean? Like, snipers don't give out the orders. People don't follow snipers. So deep down, he knows he's not a leader.
He just wants to show up and hoop.
But they don't have a leader. And that's exactly what it is. That kind of my Kevin Durant impression. Like, I just want to hoop. I just want to hoop. That's my Kevin Durant. That's all he ever said. I just want to hoop, man. I just want to hoop and make burner accounts. So, because they think they might have found a burner account that he made right after they got eliminated, where he was on there defending KD. It was like K Durant fan 7 or something like that, and he's like, "Man, ain't nothing he could have done. He was out there by himself." And people were looking it up.
KD.
They're like, this account was just made like 8 hours ago or something. Like, who is this guy? And everyone's like, "That's Kevin Durant." So, that kind of insecurity, like, I don't know what they're going to end up doing. Going forward. We're at the top of the hour. I do need to take a break now. I think Rod and Brandon are going to get out of here. Larry, I don't know if you're sticking around or not. We got Skylar Callahan and Ryan Smith coming in here in about 20 minutes. Coming up next, though, Brendan Marks from the Athletics are going to join us to talk about North Carolina and Duke hoops recruiting. Big names landing with both squads. Hubert Davis coming off a huge run to the national championship game. John Shire yanking that torch away from Coach K, and we're going to see what he's going to do. He's already been after it with the #1 recruiting class for next year, and I think the year after currently right now too. So both teams getting after it in recruiting. We'll talk to Brendan about all things North Carolina and Duke hoops here in just a bit. You're listening to The Rundown on WWBG 1470 AM and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
Listening to The Rundown with Desmond Johnson.
ChemSource Direct is a single source supplier. In business since 2007, they have over 80,000 products for customers just like you. Located in the heart of North Carolina, they supply cleaning products all throughout the Southeast. Whether you're a commercial business, office, or municipal building, looking for wholesale cleaning products, chemicals, cleaning equipment, or service, they've got you covered. Please reach out and start saving money today. Stop by their store open to the public and save. ChemSource Direct, 1207 South Park Drive in Kernersville. Give them a call at 336-515-9990. Order from the website at chemsourcedirect.com.
One stop number 6, located just 1 mile west of East Forsyth at 2748 West Mountain Street, Kernersville. A proud supporter of East Forsyth since 1983, serving fresh fried chicken and our famous taters 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. For a limited time, grab our Wife Saver family meal for only $13.99. 8 pieces of chicken and sides for 4 for just $13.99. One stop. Come see us at 2748 West Mountain Street in Kernersville.
Area softball stars. Register for the Diamond Star Softball Transfer Portal Showcase June 14th and 15th at Bob Lewis Park in Asheville, North Carolina. This showcase is for any player currently in the transfer portal or any JUCO player. Get the opportunity to showcase your skills in front of college coaches from all levels. Over the 2-day event, players participate in evaluations such as softball skills and metrics by College Sports Evaluations, drill and team practice participation, and playing in 3 games. For more information, visit DiamondStarEvents.net or email Coach Ben McKinney at bmckinney@DiamondStarEvents.net.
Rundown with Desmond Johnson.
Welcome back into the Rundown. with Desmond Johnson. That would be me, Desmond Johnson, here on a beautiful Saturday morning here in the Triad of North Carolina. You can listen to us on WWBG 1470 AM in the Triad every Saturday morning live, and of course online at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. And all these social media outlets that we're on right now, Facebook Watch, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. Literally, you can get to us any way imaginable. So definitely check in with us every Saturday morning to get your sports fix before you get your sports weekend started. Wanted to touch on, I know it's NFL draft weekend, got a lot of other things going on, but Carolina and Duke basketball are still dominating the headlines, even though the season ended multiple weeks ago. So I had to bring in Brendan Marks, beat writer for The Athletic. He writes for North Carolina and for Duke. Brendan, what's going on, man? How you doing? I know you've been super busy the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been a light spring. Not too awful much going on, but we're making it through. We're almost to the end of it, so the finish line is in sight at least.
So I wanted to hit you up, and especially, I'm kind of glad we kind of waited until now to do this because things have changed since we first started trying to coordinate this in terms of future rosters for Carolina and Duke. And even though it's April the 28th, we just had the Final Four, an historic Final Four with Carolina and Duke facing each other for the first time ever. That was just literally, 4 weeks ago? And they're still dominating the headlines with these signings that they're having here. First, I wanted to start off with Carolina. Earlier this week, Carolina, they picked up a huge commitment on Wednesday with Gigi Jackson committing to the program, rated number 6 in the ESPN Top 100 as of today for 2023. Brendan, tell us a little bit about Jackson and why he's such a big signing for Hubert Davis and the Tar Heels.
Yeah, so you mentioned him being number 6 right now. There's a very good chance that Gigi Jackson ends up as the number 1 player in the class of 2023. He is that good. He is that special of talent. 6'9", 210 pounds. He's got sort of that perfect body and athleticism to play the stretch 4 role in Hubert Davis's system. Somebody who's comfortable, banging inside, can step outside, probably less comfortable stepping outside and hitting shots than someone like a Brady Manning, but he can still do it. Defensively, he's got great length, great twitchiness. Like, he's got all the tools. And that's why I think this is such a big deal for Hubert Davis, is because what it does is it immediately legitimizes him on the recruiting trail. At this point, North Carolina now has 2 5-stars verbally committed for the 2023 class with Jackson and Simeon Wilcher, who's a combo guard, also a 5-star guy. Like, the national championship run, even losing to Kansas in the title game, is paying dividends on the recruiting trail. And, we have seen what John Shire has been able to do across the street. North Carolina has sort of been on the back burner comparatively to Duke in terms of recruiting the last couple of years. Gigi Jackson's commitment is sort of the sign that things are leveling out again. And so I think that we're going to continue to see these two sides, go head to head for top recruits like this. And in getting Jackson to come to Chapel Hill, Hubert Davis is saying, listen, I can get some of these top guys too.
Recruiting news updates with Brendan Marks from The Athletic here on the Rundown. The other big UNC news from this past week, on Sunday night, right before the NBA deadline to declare for the draft, guard Caleb Love elected to return to UNC for his junior year. The Heels will have 4 or 5 starters returning from their Final Four run of this previous season. Who would be the candidate to take Brady Manek's spot there in that stretch 4, and why, if you're looking at this roster currently right now, Brendan?
Yeah, so, I think the obvious guy who comes to mind is Puff Johnson. He stepped up in a big way in the national title game, poured in 11 points, looked very comfortable on literally the biggest stage that he could be on in college hoops. So I think he's probably the top contender. The thing that concerns me about anybody who's going to fill that role is UNC is not going to have somebody at the 4 spot next year who shoots 40% from 3, which is what Brady Manning did. Brady Manning shot 40.3% from 3. And I think a lot of people, when Brady Manning signed at UNC, there was a lot of talk he's a fine 3-point shooter. He had sort of been in that 35 to 38% mold every year at Oklahoma. Last year was the best year of Brady Manning's career at the same time. So North Carolina is not going to have somebody that proficient. I think likely it is going to be a competition between Puff Johnson and Dontrez Styles for that spot. Dontrez shot 16.7% from 3 last year. Puff shot 23.1%. So neither one of them is even close to that, and that's obviously going to be a huge offseason focus. But I think what you're going to see is when those guys are stepping in to fill Brady Manek's spot, they're not necessarily going to have the same role. That floor spacing role, more of it is going to have to fall on UNC's backcourt. So for as many shots and as many threes as Caleb Love and RJ Davis took this year, I think it's going to be even more next season. I think somebody like a Seth Trimble who's coming in the backcourt can help there as well. But there's no replacing Brady Manick. Hubert Davis is going to have to run a slightly different system again, but that's part of the reason he's the head coach now. He's got more diversity of thought. He's more willing to be flexible with his personnel. And, UNC getting 4 of the 5 starters back is still well situated for success next season.
It's crazy, too, because just thinking back on the season as a Carolina Hoops fan, Brady Manick wasn't even starting when the season began. It was Darson Garcia in that 4th spot. And then once Garcia got the concussion, it kind of opened the door for Manick, and then the team kind of started to click, and Garcia never really cracked the rotation again. And I just saw that Garcia is transferring to Minnesota for next year. Something I saw this week that kind of, raised my eyebrows a little bit. Kerwin Walton announcing he was going to test the NBA waters. It seemed odd to me considering he fell out of the Heels rotation almost entirely early in the ACC schedule of it. What have you heard with this? What's going on with him? Is this a scenario where, I don't even want to phrase it this way, but is this a scenario where Hubert needs a scholarship and he's getting pushed out, you think? Or is this something with Kerwin's family? Like, I've heard multiple things as to why he's decided to do this. It just seems odd because Kerwin didn't really play last year due to deficiencies in his game. So what have you heard with the situation with Kerwin Walton?
Yeah, so like Kerwin's not going to get drafted. Let me just, I think a lot of, we can all recognize that Kerwin Walton, should he ultimately go through with declaring for the draft, he is not going to be selected. Like you mentioned, he hasn't seen serious minutes since significantly earlier in the season. The last time he had double digits against Pitt, had 11 points. That was in the middle of February, and UNC lost that game at home, not surprisingly. So, yeah, right. So his last double digit scoring performance before that was Charleston back in November. I remember being there that night and him saying that, any one of us can put on the Superman cape that we need to. And that was really the last time that Kerwin Walton did it. So here's how I understand the situation with Kerwin. He understands where he is in North Carolina's pecking order. He understands that RJ Davis and Caleb Love are going to start. He understands that they're going to see the majority of the minutes at the guard spot. He understands that he's competing with Seth Trimble and DeMarco Dunn for backup minutes, basically. And we saw this season that Hubert Davis, if he doesn't trust guys, he's not going to play them. This season turned for North Carolina when Hubert Davis made the difficult, personal decision to go to these guys and be like, listen, I got 5 and they're pretty good. And that's all that I trust to play right now. And that's tough to hear. And it's tough for a coach, especially a first-time head coach, to do, but that's what correlated to win. So in the case of Kerwin Walton, the things that he needs to get better at are pretty clear cut. Number one, he's got to get back to his freshman year shooting splits. He was a 42% 3-point shooter as a freshman, dropped to 35.4% last season. At the same time, he's got to get back to being better defensively. Not that he was great as a freshman, but his foul rate, nearly doubled from his freshman season to last season. Couldn't really keep any in front of him. So he struggled in that regard. And then the last thing he's got to be able to do, he's got to be able to do more than shoot the ball when he's on the floor. He's got to be able to move. He's got to be able to drive. He's got to be able to pass. And thus far, those parts of his game haven't necessarily translated to the ACC level. So Kerwin understands that there are things he's got to do to get better. I think he, in the eyes of the NBA last year, was somebody that was seen as a potential future, guy to watch to be a draft pick just because of the 3-point shot. That doesn't necessarily go away with one season, but he's got to rediscover some of these things if he wants to crack the lineup again. I do not intend that. From what I've been told, there's no intention that he's going to transfer. The staff is not expecting anybody else on the roster to transfer. I think this is a situation of Kerwin going and getting more feedback on what he needs to get better at so he can be better prepared to hopefully make an impact next season.
And that's the argument I was having with Heels fans, because I made the mistake again, Brendan, of going on social media and going into Facebook groups and, gauging the reaction of Tar Heel fans and doing that to double-edged sword, because you'll have intelligent Tar Heel fans, and then you'll have the ones that are not exactly bright enough to understand what's happening with Kerwin Walton or whatever with the Carolina program. And to me, that's what it felt like. It felt like, okay, he's just going to test the waters, get some feedback. Justin Jackson did it. A lot of Carolina players have done this in the past. It just felt odd because Kerwin wasn't playing at all. So it was like, is this something else going on? Because I know they had one of the beauties of the Final Four run. It feels like Carolina's become a destination again, where there was a little bit of a dip there where it felt like they weren't a place where like the top guys wanted to go. Now it feels like because of the shine of the past 2 or 3 months and Hubert taking over the program, now it feels like they're back on track as a destination program. A place that hadn't had to worry about being a destination for a very long time is 8 miles down the road, and that is Duke. Mark Mitchell and Christian Reeves signed officially with Duke on Wednesday. Duke's 2022 class is ranked number 1 overall. It has 5 kids in it, rated in the top 50. Brendan, are you surprised or did you expect this type of recruiting from first-year head coach John Scheyer?
I expected John Scheyer to be a very good recruiter as a head coach because he was a very recruiter as an assistant. He has always been a very good recruiter because he is incredibly personable. He can relate to people from all sorts of different backgrounds. He's a guy, much like Coach K, who even, like Duke's, for example, Duke's black parents, their black coaches, they've said like, John transcends race. He understands some of the things that are relevant to us and has made it a priority to continue hiring a diverse staff. So like, I thought he would be a very good recruiter. To say that I thought that he was going to rattle off back-to-back number 1 classes and consistently be bringing in the top, 3 players in the country every year would be an exaggeration because nobody has done this as a first-year head coach before.
Yeah, it's really nuts.
Nobody ever. So, the thing that I'm interested in is how his recruiting targets shift in the future. So he is, thus far sort of followed the same model that Duke has run the last couple of years where it's been a very small net. They really focus in and hone in on the players they want and go hard after, a set of 5 to 10 guys. They're not going after 20 or 30 different guys. They're not sending out that many offers. They're much more selective. And in bringing in all these great players, that's fantastic. I'm concerned, not concerned. I am intrigued by how they all fit together. You've got 2 guys in Derek Lively and Kyle Filipowski, whose both best position is probably at the 5 spot. You've got a guy in Dariq Whitehead who could play either the 2 or the 3. Mark Mitchell is probably best situated as a 4-man, but he's not someone who's really going to stretch the floor as a freshman. So how does it all come together? And I think that is sort of my biggest concern. But no, the recruiting tear John Scheyer is on is otherworldly right now. It's never been done by a first-year head coach. And, to some extent, we'll see how much he's able to keep this up for the years to come.
I literally have that written down as the next question. Do you think Scheyer will continue the path of recruiting multiple one-and-dones in classes, or do you think he'll change a little bit from K's style? That going along with the transfer portal, Duke targeting 6'10" Northwestern transfer Ryan Young. He visited Duke on Thursday. Who do you think hits the portal harder over the next year or two, UNC or Duke, and why? And to add on to that, do you think the transfer portal is driving out the older coaches in college basketball right now?
I don't know that the transfer portal in and of itself is driving them out. I think that the dramatic changes to college athletics, of which the transfer portal is one element, I think that that's what's driving coaches out. And it's not because they're like, oh, I don't believe in this. I don't believe in players having the freedom of movement. I don't believe in players, being compensated via NIL. It's like, it is hard for me to articulate just how different the college sports landscape looks today compared to the end of June of last summer, before NIL was in effect, before the NCAA had officially passed its one-time transfer policy. Like, it is jarring how different it is. And people like Coach K, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, like, could they have adapted? Could they have figured this out? Absolutely 100% they could have. They've adapted throughout the course of their careers before. I just don't know that they wanted to, at their ages, put in the time and the energy to sort of rework their models. And I don't blame them for that whatsoever, because it's arduous. And, I think that, as it relates to Duke and Carolina both hitting the portal, both of them are going to continue to use it in the years to come. Carolina's capped out on scholarships right now, so they won't be able to this season. But, next year, you're looking at multiple departures. Leaky Black will be out of eligibility. One figures that probably Armando Bacot, Caleb Love are going to be gone. Maybe RJ Davis tests the draft waters. Justin McCoy can graduate if he wants. So there are multiple vacancies next year looking at North Carolina where I would expect they're going to dip into the portal. And as for Duke, same case. I think we are probably not quite to the point yet where Duke wants to be pulling starters out of the portal. I think Duke is, I think one of the things that Scheyer has done really well with his recruiting classes is, yes, he's getting the high-end top 25-star guys who are one-and-done potential. He's also getting someone like a Mark Mitchell who's right on the threshold. someone who's a 5-star talent. He's rated, top 25 in the country, but might not be a one and done, might not have that role. A guy like Jaden Schutt, who's a top 50 guy, maybe he's not a one and done, but he's someone who can be a multi-year contributor. It's about being able to walk the line and getting both those guys in the same classes. And thus far, Shire has shown that he's able to do that. And I think continuing to strike that balance is really what he's going to focus on the next few years.
Talking with the Athletics, Brendan Marks, beat writer for North Carolina and Duke Athletics. If you want to check out any news or updates there, follow Brendan on Twitter at what's your Twitter handle one more time? It's Brendan.
At Brendan R. Marks.
R. Marks. That's all right. I'm sorry.
No,
Brendan. So real quick before I get you out of here, Brendan, there was this concern about a month ago. Many fans worried that UNC versus Duke in the Final Four would basically equal Armageddon, that it would end the rivalry as we know it. What is your sense of this? Because it feels like it's stronger than ever with Hubert and Shire taking over these historic programs. The recruiting we just talked about, they're super active. Duke bringing in the number one class for like the umpteenth time. This time with Shire at the helm, Hubert with these two top 10 guys coming in 2023. What's your sense of the pulse of this rivalry, Carolina and Duke? Is it still the greatest in college basketball going forward?
Oh, absolutely it is. I think it's changing though. I think that the dynamic of it is changing. You look at what there was with Coach K and Roy Williams. There was, experience. There was years of respect. There was history there. And I think that now what you're seeing is things are transitioning into a younger era with Hubert Davis and with John Shire and their respective staffs. Is like these guys don't like each other. It's frosty. And that's great. That's what we want. We want this to be contentious. And it showed up with the players. I think Caleb Love and Theo John got into, sort of a back and forth on social media this year. The assistant coaches obviously have had their, various, I don't know what a few, you don't know, they're not like incidents, but they've had their happenings.
Shade.
Yes, lots of shade.
Episodes.
I think that's amazing. I think that's what it should be. I think that's how this rivalry is. There's still going to be respect. Obviously, these two, I think they both understand that without one another, they're not at their respective levels. But certainly, I think that North Carolina having, won the last two iterations of the rivalry, one being Coach K's last home game, one being the Final Four game, I think North Carolina fans definitely have some bragging rights right now. But let's say that John Shire goes 2-0 or 3-0 against North Carolina next season with this core coming back, it evens things out right back again. So that's the beauty of it. It's constantly evolving, constantly shifting. But no, there is not a better rivalry in all of college sports. I think it's the best rivalry in sports, period. But obviously, I'm a little bit biased.
Same here. I've always said either Carolina Duke or Lakers Celtics is like the greatest rivalry like in sports because of when they meet, how they meet, just the hatred between the fan bases. I know people say Yankees, Red Sox, and Alabama, Auburn, and Ohio State, Michigan, and all that's well and good. But like the Yankees and Red Sox open up the season, like a couple weeks ago, they're going to play like 12 times or whatever. It's just, I don't know. It's just something about Carolina and Duke. And now that we've kind of broken the seal, so to speak, I kind of feel like they're going to see each other in the Final Four like every 4 years. Like it's just going to start naturally happening. And we'll all sit back and laugh about how we were so worried if they ever saw each other on that plateau. I wouldn't be surprised if the committee puts them in the same region now. With everything
for my health, I need that to not happen again. That was that was
the beauty of it too. That Final Four game, that was a really good game. That was probably, I was talking to a friend about that. One of the better Carolina Duke games I can remember, and especially in recent memory. To me, it was like right up there with the 2019 ACC semifinal that they had on that Friday night with the Zion squad with Duke, Kobe's squad with Carolina. That was an excellent game too, and it was kind of right up there with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think comparatively, the championship game, as one of my friends from the Washington Post, Chuck Culpepper, put it, it drunkenly stumbled backwards down Bourbon Street into becoming a classic. The Duke Carolina game was just haymakers the entire second half. Like it was 71,000 people in the building being anxious all together. It was awesome. It was awesome.
And it's been a month and I still kind of get chills over it. I wish I had DVR'd the game. I don't know what I was thinking, but Brendan Marks from The Athletic, appreciate you joining us, man. We'll catch up with you here a little bit down the road as we see more and more roster changes for Duke and Carolina. It's nuts that the season's over and we're still talking Duke Carolina hoops, but that's what we do here in the state of North Carolina. Appreciate you, Brendan.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, more from the rundown here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com and WWBG 1470 AM.
You're listening to The Rundown with Desmond Johnson.
This is Davis Troxler, the proud owner of North Carolina Golf Academy and the Director of Instruction. Don't let your golf game suffer from this dreary winter season. Come hit some golf balls, take a lesson. You can call us at 336-324-2374 for details. Thank you, and keep it in the fairway.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Kuhn-Godfrey. I'm running at large for the Board of Education. Making sure all students have quality, accessible, and equitable education is my priority. It would be an honor to serve our community as a member of the board. Vote Sabrina Kuhn-Godfrey for BOE during early voting or on primary day, May 17th.
Paid for by Sabrina Kuhn-Godfrey for BOE.
Maylor Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture, located at 205 North Cherry Street in Kernersville, is your family chiropractor. Dr. Maylor's goal is to treat and correct the underlying cause of patient symptoms, to alleviate pain, and to restore balance. Maylor Chiropractic treats pain, sports injuries, injuries from auto accidents, and much more. Start performing to the best of your ability, pain-free. Give them a call and set your appointment today at 336-996-3737. Maylor Chiropractic in Kernersville. One stop number 6, located just 1 mile west of East Forsyth at 2748 West Mountain Street, Kernersville. A proud supporter of East Forsyth since 1983, serving fresh fried chicken and our famous taters 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. For a limited time, grab our Wife Saver family meal for only $13.99. 8 pieces of chicken and sides for 4 for just $13.99. One stop. Come see us at 2748 West Mountain Street in Kernersville.
You are locked into Tobacco Road Sports Radio, your home for Triad Sports.
And you know this, man.
Back to the rundown with Desmond Johnson.
Welcome back into the rundown live here on WWBG 1470 AM in the Triad and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. The podcast version of today's episode will be available on Anchor and all major podcast formats a little bit later on this afternoon. Stitcher, Luminary, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, all the good stuff. So you'll be able to catch all that there. Shout out to Hot Rod Funderburk and Brandon Blakeney checking in all the way from North Dakota, hour number 1. Frankly Speaking Sports host Larry Frank still with us here in hour 2. Now joined by Sports Illustrated beat writer Skylar Callahan and Ryan Smith from Learfield Sports. Guys, I wanted to go right back to Carolina Panthers in their draft. Of course, me and Skylar are the co-hosts of the Believe in Carolina Panthers podcast. That'll be a new episode this Tuesday where we will dissect the entire Carolina Panthers draft that's about to kick off the 4th round here in about 30 minutes on ESPN and ABC. But I wanted to talk about the 2 draft picks the Panthers did select. Starting off with Ewkwonu from North Carolina State. Skylar, last time me and you spoke face-to-face in this format, I don't think either one of us thought that Ewkwonu would still be available at pick 6. And we were texting back and forth to each other while this was going on. And it got to a certain point where I was just like, this is about to happen. Like, all 3 of the left tackles are still sitting there. Never once in our mock drafts over the past, 2 months, I went back to go, peep through some of them. I don't think we picked Ewkwonu at 6 ever. It never crossed our mind.
No, I think he was actually my first or second mock pick, but I'm talking way back during the season.
Yeah.
That was before I even actually did the full 7-round mock. So he started getting a lot of interest in the top 5. Some even thought he could go number 1 to Jacksonville until they figured things out with Cam Robinson. So they were elated to have really the option of any of the 3. And it would have been interesting, I think, what would have happened had Ewkwonu gone, had Neal gone, had Charles Cross gone, because that was a possibility. If all 3 tackles would have gone, would they have reached for Kenny Pickett? Would they have reached for Malik Willis? And those guys wouldn't have had to wait as long as they did. I think it would have changed the entire draft. But luckily for Carolina, they did the right thing. They didn't reach on a quarterback. They took the guy that's going to make an impact. Now the offensive line is really just light years better than it was 2 weeks ago.
My thought was from our previous Believe in Panthers episode when we did our mock top 10, where the Giants picking Thibodeau at 5 made me feel like they thought the Panthers might take him at 6. Like if he was still sitting on the board, because they had the 5th and the 7th pick. So the Giants went into that knowing, okay, all 3 of the left tackles that we like that were at the top of the board are still here. Thibodeau is still here too. So if we take Thibodeau at 5, we kind of force Carolina into a situation where they got to take one of these left tackles. They'd be foolish not to. And with our pick 7, we're going to have either Evan Neal or Ewkwonu still there. Like they can't take 2 of them. So like one of them still going to be there. And that's exactly what happened. They ended up with Evan Neal at pick 7. Ryan, I was more shocked that not that there weren't quarterbacks taken in the first round. Well, Kenny Pickett at 20 to Pittsburgh, but none in the second round. And then there was a little bit of a rush at the bottom of the third. How surprised were you? It felt like the sports media talking heads such as ourselves vastly overrated the quarterback class in comparison to where the teams had these quarterbacks. Were you taken aback by the kind of disinterest in the quarterbacks this year?
I was. It just depends on what you see the value as. I thought for Kenny Pickett, he's literally just going to change locker rooms. And it's like the Steelers have seen him for 5 years. So like that was a good pick, a great pick for the Steelers. And that's a great ideal situation for Pickett. But for Willis, yes, I was surprised that he didn't go earlier. I think it just shows that the media can say all they want, but truly the NFL has their own version of what they value. And for Willis, I thought he landed in a good spot for Tennessee. It was probably a little later than obviously he wanted to go, and I was surprised by that. But I thought he landed in a great spot with Tennessee. And then you look at Matt Corral for the Panthers. They didn't, like Skylar said, they didn't force the pick. They gave up a 3rd round next year, which in all hindsight is really nothing when you think about it, because then worst case scenario, if he has to play this year and he's not that good, they can just try again and take another swing next year, as Scott Fitter has constantly said.
Yes, and I wanted to talk about Matt Corral. We saved him for the second hour when I was going to have you guys on, and I made the mistake of, I know Scott Fitter mentioned something along the lines of you probably want to watch the 2nd or 3rd round tonight to like the Panther fans, and we're all sitting around like we don't have any picks. Like, we might be able to get back up in there, but as the board started to shift and there were no quarterbacks, I found myself watching the 2nd round, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to sit here all night and wait and see if the Panthers make a trade or something. I'm going to go do something else. And literally went to bed early, actually. Went to bed super early. That's like 10:30. And woke up this morning and realized that they actually did this about 30 minutes after I went to bed. In the 3rd round, the Panthers traded with the New England Patriots. And Joe Person over at The Athletic, who's been on the show a few times, he kind of described the situation where Scott Fitterer is working the phones with the Cleveland Browns. Last night, we were this close to bringing Baker Mayfield in here, but the Browns and the Panthers couldn't decide on how much the Browns were going to pay Baker Mayfield's salary. Meanwhile, Matt Rule is on the phone with Bill Belichick trying to figure out what the trade parameters need to be for pick 90 or whatever pick it was that they ended up getting, or 94 that ended up being Matt Corral. Once those quarterbacks started falling down, like all the way through the 2nd, like there wasn't a quarterback pick, it feels like the Panthers shifted their focus more to getting a rookie quarterback as opposed to bringing in Baker Mayfield. Larry, do you think that they made the right choice? Do you think that it was a better situation for the Panthers to go into next season with Sam Darnold and Matt Corral in the quarterback room and PJ Walker? Although I could easily see them cutting PJ Walker and bringing Cam Newton back in here or whoever else, like as a veteran quarterback. Or was it better for them to draft a rookie, which they did, Matt Corral, which by all accounts seems like that was kind of their number one target all along, and have Sam Darnold here and let them fight it out? Which way do you think was the best route to go?
The way they did it was the best route to go. Definitely. That there's no question in my mind that they made the right choice. Getting Baker Mayfield is buying a used car. It comes with problems. And that's what you were going to get when you got Baker Mayfield. Now, it's different if Baker Mayfield had an incredible career so far and you're getting a top-notch quarterback. Remember, this isn't Aaron Rodgers. This isn't Russell Wilson. It's Baker Mayfield, okay? Nothing great about him. You already have Baker Mayfield on your team and Sam Darnold, Okay, so you're not increasing your chances or bettering it. Now you go after Matt Corral, who by far is considered by many to be actually one of the top quarterbacks, if not the top quarterbacks that was in the draft. I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
But he has a strong arm. He's very accurate. The only thing that scares me, and I say scares me, is that it just so happens that the 2 games I watched Matt Corral in one was versus Arkansas and one was versus LSU. Just so happened in those 2 games, he had 11 picks in 2 games. That just tells you, I just watched 2 bad games. Otherwise, he's had a perfect career there at Ole Miss. I think also you have the difference of Matt Corral coming in. He's not trained yet in the NFL. It's like, a new employee. Okay, he's only going to learn the Panthers way rather than Baker Mayfield, who was in Cleveland, that knows the Cleveland way and has to now adjust to Carolina's way. It's so much easier. And like Ryan said, so what's the worst scenario? This guy doesn't work out. You used a 3rd round pick on him. Next year is going to be an unbelievable quarterback class. I think you got Bryce Young, somebody else, CJ Stroud is it, a couple of other guys coming out in this draft. But for those Carolina fans that are thinking, slow down a little bit, he is not going to be the starting quarterback this year in Carolina. That is still going to be Sam Darnold. He's going to sit. He's going to learn. He's going to get educated and watch the pace of the game and learn this fast pace. So you may not even know, and I know it's hypocritical to what I just said, we may not know till next year how good Matt Corral will really be.
I feel like Matt Corral's gonna get a chance this year. Like, I think you're giving Sam Darnold too much credit. We've seen the sample size, not just from Carolina, but in the Jets too.
You haven't seen the sample size, Desmond. He has never had an offensive line since he's been in the league. He has never been protected. Okay. Now they went out and great job by Scott Fitterer to get an offensive lineman to help protect this guy. But in order, before you can judge, look at the first 3 games of last season. He was 3-0. He rushed for, I think, 4 or 5 touchdowns in those first 3 games. He was throwing for an average of 300 yards. Why? Because he didn't get hit. He didn't have pressure on him. All of a sudden, that offensive line showed what it wasn't made of. From that point on, when they started playing teams like Dallas and so on, they got pressure on them. They got humiliated, that offensive line, and Sam Darnold was in distress until he got hurt. Now, I'm not sitting here and telling you Sam Darnold's going to be the best quarterback, since Tom Brady, but I'm telling you, in order to give him a fair shot, he has no excuses now. He has the weapons. He has the offensive line. They probably either going to go after an offensive lineman here or a defensive, maybe an edge rusher later on in this thing. We'll see. It's best available probably. But at the end of the day, maybe they go and pick up a free agent. Still a lot of free agent offensive linemen out there. They protect Donald, and then they're able to assess and say, look, we gave you everything you needed around you. You didn't perform. But until they do that, these people in Carolina have to stop saying Sam Darnold sucks. No, the team around him sucks, and he's part of that. So instead,
I'm going to lean still towards Sam Darnold sucks, not the team. Like, just from watch, because the defense is fine.
So what happened in those first 3 games?
He had Christian McCaffrey to check down to. That's why I don't.
Okay, so he didn't have the tools.
Right, he didn't have McCaffrey. Like, everything else was still there. Now, granted, the offensive line did not play very well last year. In fact, they were probably one of the worst lines in the league. So I will credit that yes, this is make it or break it time for Sam Darnold. He's never going to have an offense like this going forward. He's never going to have
let me ask you this, Desmond. If you knew they were going to throw 100% of the time, don't you know the defense to play on them and keep rushing them? There was nobody in that backfield that could help him out when McCaffrey went down. So it was pretty much free shot on the quarterback every single time. And I'm not saying you're wrong. Please,
he was holding the
I'm not
ball
saying
too.
that.
Let's remember that too. He was holding the ball way too long towards
Sure,
the end,
he
which,
was.
which attributed to him getting hurt.
Sure.
Now the fact that Rule put him right back in there as soon as he could before the season was over kind of showed their hands that if the season started today, Sam Darnold's a starter. That's right. Fine. But Matt Corral, and I want to bring Skylar back in here on this. What are the odds of Matt Corral starting on day one? Because like out of all the four of us sitting here, you're more in tune with what the Panthers are doing and thinking on a day-to-day basis. And it felt like they did not want to bring in a free agent at quarterback, that they kind of just did that last year and they wanted their own guy. And for them to get Matt Corral and going up to go get him for a minimum cost, what's your grade on this for them landing Corral here in the third round?
My grade's probably between a B- and a C+. And the only reason I say that is because they didn't have to give up much to give him, like Rick Ryan said. And if it doesn't work out, they don't like the progress that he makes in the year, and they're sitting in a premium position next year, they can get their guy. But I'm not sold on Matt Corral. I'm really not. We need to pump the brakes on him being the face of the franchise, because I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and then before we can say that. And actually, I was just curious to see what I rated him. So I was looking this up while y'all were talking. I had him as the fourth best quarterback in this class. And oddly enough, the top four quarterbacks that I had in my ratings have gone exactly how they've been drafted so far. I had Pickett, Willis, Ritter, Corral, and then after Corral, I had Howell, Strong, and Zappi. So it's kind
Howell's
of
going early today.
I would say Howell's going to go probably very, very early, probably within the first 10 picks. But for Corral, I don't think there's just so much that there's so many question marks with this game. And when you're running in the RPO offense, you're not going through progressions. You're not going in 7-step dropbacks. You're not going through progressions way downfield. You're not throwing the ball downfield much. This is going to be a whole new ball game for him. This is like checkers to chess. Like, it's a whole different thing. And you asked me to put a percentage on how much he could be a day one starter. You know, I wouldn't say anything's ever impossible, but I'd give it 0.5% because I think it's very unlikely that he starts. And I don't know, unless Sam gets hurt, that we see him start a game this year.
That's a possibility, yeah.
Yeah,
he's 23. I didn't realize he was that old. He finished 4 years at Ole Miss, 67.3% completion percentage for his career there, 57 touchdown passes to 23 interceptions, but had a ratio of 20 TDs to 5 picks in 2021. He also rushed for 614 yards this past season as well. Head coach Matt Rule said he's got the quickest release they've seen in a quarterback in quite some time. The fearlessness with which he plays with, he's just constantly working on his game. They also said that what attracted the Panthers to Corral went beyond statistics. They noted how Corral's teammates at Ole Miss kind of rallied around him during his pro day when he was ready to throw passes. They rallied around him when he hurt his foot in the Sugar Bowl. Rule said they're going to bring him along slow. So to echo what Skylar and Larry were saying there, saying that Darnold would be the starter if the season started today. I'm fine with that. And I do agree with Larry. We do need to see, just for what we gave up for Sam Darnold, we do need to see him in this offense with the offensive line. Shout out to Scott Fitterer for fixing this offensive line. This offensive line was probably one of the worst last year. Last year, I was about to say, last year, me and Skylar were probably the only ones on the planet that were looking at the Panthers roster and going, hey, you know what? This defense could be top 10. And we said it like for the entire off, like before the season began and then into the season. And then lo and behold, it started happening. And we were like, I guess we were right. And I'm sitting there thinking, are we going to do this again? Are we going to say this offensive line can be a top 10 offensive line unit? Because I looking at what they brought in, the center from Baltimore, Bozeman, the guard from the Rams.
That's right.
Corbett. Corbett, is that his name? Corbett. You just drafted Ewkwonu, who arguably was the top talent in this draft,
and he's going to be there for 5 years at least.
Correct, a 5th-year option. Yeah.
If he works out, that's a 10-year starter right there at left tackle for Carolina. You move Brady Christensen to left guard, and you already had Taylor Moton at right tackle. So, I mean,
and I think that's
going to say it out loud. Like it feels like they fixed it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Brady Christensen could be the key piece here this year. How well does he play? Because I thought he should have got so much more time last year. than he actually did. But if you don't mind, Desmond, I want to ask Skylar a quick question. Skylar, you mentioned the quarterbacks and how you had them rated, and I don't disagree with you at all with your rating system, but there are certain players, no matter how they're rated, that fit better to different teams. Do you think in this case, because this is what I thought, and if I'm wrong, I love your opinion, but I agree with, Matt Corral, being up there as rating, but I felt for Carolina, that the better fit here would have been Sam Howell of UNC than it was Matt Corral, just because of the system they play. What's your thought on that? Did you think that Howell would have been, even though you had him ranked a little behind, did he fit the scheme of Carolina better than you thought Matt Corral would?
I think so in a certain way. The only reason I think they went with Corral is because he's more mobile. Now, Howell is mobile, but right. When you look at his game, I see a lot of Baker Mayfield in Sam Howell. So
yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be Baker Mayfield. I think he could be better, but I think the mobility aspect of it, Corral's just on a whole different level, and that's what they want to bring to this offense. Now, as far as everything else, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Howell would be a better fit. And that's why I'm kind of confused, because when we talked to Ben McAdoo a couple weeks back, he's like, I'm a big swing for the fences kind of guy. That sends signals that was Malik Willis, and that, the most ready guy isn't always the best guy. Well, okay, he didn't really like Kenny Pickett that much. And then they started talking about, different offenses, and then they got into the RPO stuff and how some guys in college, depending on what system they're in, doesn't necessarily translate. I'm like, okay, well, maybe he doesn't think Corral can translate. So I don't know. Maybe I read the whole situation wrong. That's why I was kind of a little surprised that it was Corral. But it's just going to be like you guys have been saying. This has got to be Sam Darnold's team from the start. And don't be surprised if Sam Darnold does decent and this team wins 8 or 9 games and Matt Corral's not ready. Sam Darnold might be back in 2023.
Oh, don't say it. Don't say it, Skylar.
Well, let me ask you, how much can Ben McAdoo? How much will Ben McAdoo? Remember, he's never had a good offensive coordinator either. Ben McAdoo has been, look what he's done. Eli Manning, you said it, Desmond, had his best years when Ben McAdoo was his offensive coordinator. Could this be, let's see what Ben McAdoo can do with Sam Darnold, and can he bring out, the reason why this kid was the number 1 pick when he was?
I'm going to skip the commercial break because we're running out of time here, because we got to get to 12 noon and get out here on WWBG 1470 AM. Moving forward, I'm going to start off with you, Ryan. So far, we've gone through 3 rounds of the NFL draft. Typically, from 4th round onward, it's a crapshoot. We have no idea how those players are going to turn out until 3-4 years down the road, really, a lot of times, if they even make the squad. Who would you say biggest winner, biggest loser of the NFL draft up to this point? It's going to kick off here in about 10 minutes with the 4th round, but we got 3 rounds to go through, and those are going to be the ones that are going to be on the main 52 for the most part. Starting off, who would you give a big winner award to out of the entire NFL for what they did the past 2 nights?
It's hard to pick between the Jets and the Ravens. They both have had fantastic drafts, but I would have to say the Jets. I don't know how they got Sauce Gardner at 4, Garrett Wilson at 10, which was great in itself. And then they traded back into the 1st round and got Jermaine Johnson, who everyone thought was going to go top 10 at some point, even top 5. So the Jets, I believe, had the best draft. The Ravens, you could also argue there as well. And then the Breece Hall at 36 as well was such great value. I mean, Michael Carter's fantasy value is going to go down now. Breece Hall is going to come into that backfield and take a lot of snaps away from Michael Carter, and they're going to have a nice 1-2 punch there in New York.
Skylar, who would you give a big winner award to for the first 2 nights of the draft so far?
Well, I got to go with the theme with what Ryan said. It's got to be the Jets. I mean, no one saw Jermaine Johnson falling that far. I mean, we had Zach on our mock draft. He was getting info that he was going number 4 to the Jets potentially. They loved him that much at number 4. And when Sauce was there, they decided they wanted him, and they still ended up getting Jermaine Johnson. So outside of that, like he said, I think Baltimore had a great draft. The Giants, I mean, when you get those 2 guys at 5 and 7, you can't go wrong there. I mean, maybe Dave Gettleman could have screwed that up, but I think put them out of the building now. I think that they're much happier. They're going to get things in the right direction. And I don't want to sound like I'm being too biased, but the Panthers getting Ewkwonu. You know, they didn't have a round 2 pick. They had to trade back in to get Matt Corral. And again, you already know my opinion on that. But Ewkwonu is a tremendous pick. And I think a lot of people kind of look at the amount of picks that you have and take that as into their grading system. To me, the Panthers nailed it with Ewkwonu, and even if they would have just had that one pick through the first 3 rounds, I think they would have had one of the better drafts.
Larry, let's switch over to the loser side. Who do you think were the big losers of the past 2 nights? Because there's a couple of teams that did some pretty head-scratching things. I'll let you go first, and I'll go behind you here. But give me a squad that comes to the top of mind where you're just like, huh? Every time
between 2 teams, and I would say out of the worst, I was trying to debate between San Francisco and Chicago. And to me, Chicago really surprised me. They started off good. I mean, what they get? Kyle Gordon, the cornerback out of Washington. I'm like, all right. Then they got, what is this guy? I'm trying to read his name. Brisker, the safety. And I'm like, okay, they're going ahead after some nice defense here. But then out of nowhere, they pick a wide receiver out of Tennessee that's 25 years old, Valves Jones. I just can't understand the mindset. They needed so much on offense that why they would pick someone like that. I mean, I would say the big loser here is probably my worst grade would go to Chicago.
I'm looking at Seattle. I couldn't figure out exactly what their plan was. They picked Charles Cross, which I'm sure made Russell Wilson throw something at his television set in Denver because they've neglected the offensive line the entire time that Russell Wilson was there. He was just getting beat down like every season. As soon as he's out the door, the first pick the Seattle Seahawks take is a left tackle. And in fact, and he's a pass protecting left tackle. Or no, excuse me, he's a run first team. Well, a run first team tackle should have been what they picked. Instead, they picked Charles Cross, who played in an air raid offense, and they don't have a quarterback. So that didn't make sense. They had 2 picks in a row in the second round. They needed a quarterback. They took Kenneth Walker III, who last week I mentioned was a guy that not a lot of people were talking about that could be a steal in the later rounds. They took him and neglected taking the quarterback. And at that point, they were all on the board. Malik Willis had been attached to the Seahawks, which would have been a great value pick at in the second round to me. They ignored him. You put him with Charles Cross at left tackle. You still could have got Kenneth Walker III with the second of those picks. They just missed the opportunity to do it. Instead, they drafted Minnesota linebacker Boye Mafe, who I've never heard of before. I don't know. Maybe what's his name? The coach for the Seahawks, Pete Carroll. He's 73, so maybe he's thinking, we'll get to this year, and I'm gonna hang it up, and I'll let somebody else, do whatever.
Or does he believe in Drew Lock? Does he believe in Drew Lock?
What are you doing with Drew Lock, man? I like Seattle. It almost feels like they're punting on the season next year.
I think a lot
pretty aggressive.
I think the 2 biggest losers in the draft didn't even really. I'm not even talking about picks. Is San Francisco and Cleveland, because the Deebo Samuel Baker Mayfield thing.
Yeah.
As bad as Deebo Samuel wants out, it does not seem like he's going to re-sign with San Francisco. No matter how much they want to say, "Oh, we'll work it out. We'll just let it, heads cool down." It's not going to happen. Why not trade him now and get something out of it before you don't get anything? And it's kind of like the same thing when Khalil Mack was back with the Raiders. Everyone was like, why the heck did they just trade Khalil Mack to the Bears? Well, he wasn't going to re-sign there. He legitimately told them, I'm not coming back. So move on while you can get something for him. Baker Mayfield, they should have, if they really wanted to get rid of Baker Mayfield, they should have just told the Panthers, we'll pay the whole damn salary. Because
get out of here. Like there's no reason to play hardball at this point when you just signed Deshaun Watson there's no leverage, but they're acting as if they do have leverage. And I got to say thanks, Cleveland, because if they had done what Skylar suggested they should have did, which would have been the smart thing to do, Baker Mayfield's probably a Carolina Panther today. Instead, they played hardball. Carolina sees another route. They get a rookie quarterback in, which they wanted. They're only going to have to pay Matt Corral like $5.4 million over the next 4 years, as opposed to $18 million they would have had to pay Baker Mayfield next year. Or whatever the amount was for his 5th year, and they would have had 2 quarterbacks. So they've been paying like $36 million for Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield if they both had them over here. So they kind of dodged the bullet there. And one thing before we get out of here too, David Tepper did address the media this week. He hadn't spoken to the media since the end of 2020. And I want to address this notion that's been going around the national media that David Tepper is an impatient owner. Every single thing we have seen this man do suggests the complete opposite. He signs Matt Rule to a 7-year deal, hasn't really been in the way, basically allowed them to get through flipping this roster over entirely, understood that Matt Rule started his coaching career in the NFL in a year with COVID, so he didn't even meet his players until July or whatever it was. And all I've heard is that David Tepper's impatient. He's going to reach for Matt or Malik Willis or this and a third. And I'm like, everything that he said, even in that press conference, and Skylar, you were in there, that press conference earlier this week, he basically was preaching patience, that this is going to take time. And I don't understand the narrative where the national media is basically saying that the Panthers are impatient and Matt Rule's on a hot seat and David Tepper is angry and all this stuff. It just sound all made up because we have not heard one single stitch from David Tepper that Matt Rule's on any kind of hot seat, and no one has addressed that. Like, it doesn't feel like Matt Rule's on a hot seat at all. It feels like we think he should be on a hot seat, but David Tepper's not viewing it that way.
Yeah, I mean, he even said it that, you know, he looks at progress season to season, and yes, win-loss total does have a factor into it, but he understands that this is a long-term play. When you give a guy a 7-year deal, you know it's not going to be a quick fix, and especially when you don't have a quarterback. I mean, that's a big problem that you have to figure out right now. But when you look at everything that he's done, and again, I'm not advocating for Matt Rule to keep his job or anything, but this is just facts. Outside of the quarterback position, they have rebuilt that entire defense in 2 years to be one of the best in the league. Now they just rebuilt that entire offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time to get the quarterback position right. If they do that right, he's going to be here throughout the entire 7 years. Hate it or love it, he's going to be there.
And I'll be fine with it. Like, the one thing that Matt Rule and company have done exceptionally well is draft weekend. Like, the past 3 years, like when you look back on what they have done, they have completely turned this roster around in the draft and key free agent. It's like they sign a person in for like a year. They build up their value and then they either go elsewhere or they stick around here. But it helps the defense because it gives them some veteran presence until these younger guys grow up to be those vets themselves. But the Panthers the window has shifted at NFL. The window is right now because you've got all these kids on the defense on rookie deals. Those are all going to start coming up in the next 3 or 4 years. Same with what you just did on the offensive line. You've got McCaffrey secure for 4 years. Hopefully he can get through a season completely healthy this year. And that changes. The Panthers can win the NFC South if McCaffrey is healthy with the offensive line they just built. They re-signed DJ Moore. You already had Robbie Anderson. Terrence Marshall will be your third guy that they drafted last year in the second round. The defense finished, top 3, top 4 overall in the league last year in yards allowed. They were one of the top passing defenses in the league. You're getting J.C. Horn back. I mean, they have the talent to do a Cincinnati Bengals type of run next year, and that sounds nuts. And give me the summer to talk myself off that ledge, but I'm sitting there just kind of looking at what they've done. And I'm like, could they be the Bengals for 2020?
Sure they can. Sure. What has Matt Rule been saying since day one? Wait till year 3. Wait till year 3.
That's when it usually happens for him, too.
This is year 3. Every time he said that, it wasn't the Panthers front office that is saying that Matt Rule needs to go. It's been everybody else. Forget the media. The media is looking for a story. You guys know that. You're in the media, okay? They're looking for something to stir things up to get watchers, listeners, viewers, whatever you want to say. Matt Rule's been saying, now hold Matt Rule to the words. 3rd year, you will see this team be competitive and win. And I'll tell you what, like Desmond just said, they are built what wins championships? Defense. You built the defense first. Then you need to build the interior of the offensive line second. Yeah. Look, he has the tools. Desmond, he has unbelievable tools, skilled tools to use on that offense. Sam Darnold, here it is, baby. We're handing you this team on a silver platter. Can you do it, or do we need to find somebody else?
It's like that scene in Avengers Endgame where Captain America and Thor and Iron Man, they see Thanos kind of sitting there and they had to walk to him, and Thanos is like, you did all this stuff and what did it do? Led you right back to me. I feel like that's Sam Darnold right now. Like, he just sat through this whole weekend and he's like, I could have been traded. I could have been cut. Like, I don't know what was going to happen to me in my starting role. And after all this, all the talk, all the nonsense everybody gave and put on my name, I'm going to be a starter probably.
And
I'm
look
going
at
to
the
get a fully
confidence.
loaded offense this time around. And a year under my belt, he's learning a new offense just like Matt Corral will be with Ben McAdoo. So they're all on the same level playing field. We got to remember too. Sam Darnold lost his offensive coordinator midway through the season last year. They let Joe Brady go, so that probably affected him as well. Basically learning a new offense on the fly. We're up against it. It's 12 noon. I'm gonna invite Ryan back next week so we can go over the entire draft because I know the draft is kind of your thing. And of course, Larry will be around. We'll probably see if Skylar can come back in too, because at that point we'll have a lot more to discuss in terms of anything else the Panthers might do here over the next couple of hours, 4th through the 7th round. I'm Desmond Johnson. That's Larry Frank, Skylar Callahan, Ryan Smith. You've been listening to The Rundown on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com and WWBG 1470 AM. The podcast will be up here shortly on all major podcast formats. We will see you next week.